Welcome to the penultimate episode of Survivor 47 and Feminism. Inexcusably, the penultimate episode of Survivor 47 was called Bob and Weave.
To jump in and to bob and weave. Today's the time you either sink or swim.
Which, although it technically came out of Teeny's mouth, was a quote from production. This episode should have been called Relatively Nothing Burger.
When people chatter about Andy, it's never been in the sense of, like, you're a threat. The perception of you at the jury is relatively low. Relatively, like, nothing burger.
It works on two levels. First, the highlight of this episode is Andy convincing Rachel that his game was not a nothing burger, but actually 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, only for that to convince her to idle him out. Second, except for that plot point, the episode was a bit of a nothing burger. Sue's idol play in particular was the most boring possible outcome for an idol. The most interesting thing she could have done was dive back into her girl boss well, make a speech about wanting an all-women Final Four, and save Genevieve. That would have left both Genevieve and Rachel in the game, making a Sue victory very unlikely. But very unlikely is better than utterly unimaginable, which is the current situation. Today I'm going to depart from my regular format. For half of Relatively Nothing Burger, 80% of the people left in the game were women, so of course there were enough conversations and confessionals to satisfy my beach stool test. So instead of going through them, I want to do a deep dive on the final 4 we are left with, and how their gender storylines read in the broader context of the new era. I made this chart to summarize all the previous new era Final Fours. There are 4 interesting things I notice. Number 1, women have won most of the new era seasons. I worry that if I don't clearly state that fact, I will be accused of cherry-picking evidence to support a women always have it worse narrative. Women can, and do, often win. Number 2, season 47 is the first time in the new era that the Final Four has been 3/4 women. There was an even 2-2 in 4 of the seasons, while seasons 42 and 43 ended with 3/4 men. Number 3, each previous new era has had a 0-vote finalist. That might not be the case in Survivor 47. I can imagine a possible scenario where Rachel goes out in fire and Sam wins with 6 votes, but Teeny gets Saul's vote and Sue gets Caroline's vote. No 0-vote finalist. In a classification system that I will later describe, this is a B1B scenario. Number 4. In every previous New Era season, the runner-up who got at least 1 vote was a different gender from the winner. Let's dig into that a little further with the research question, do the dissenting jurors who vote for the non-winner tend to be the same gender as the non-winner they vote for? In the first 2 New Era seasons, the dissenter was an extraordinarily athletic man voting for a man. In the next 2 seasons, the dissenter was a man voting for a woman. In the 2 most recent seasons, the runners-up received 3 votes each, with both male and female supporters. All I conclude from that is that 70% of the jurors who did not vote for the winner were men. There was a lot of speculation that Maria voted for Kenzie because she wanted a woman to win, and maybe wanting a woman to win has been a factor in some of the female victories. But there has never been an instance in which a man won that a woman chose to vote for the non-winning woman. That might happen for the first time in Survivor 47. Possible ending B1B that I described before includes an instance of that, in Caroline's vote for Sue. How many possible endings to Survivor 47 are realistic? I classify all the possible outcomes first into A, B, and C, based on whether Rachel A wins, B loses in fire, or C makes it to final tribal council but loses. I'm marking C with a snowflake because I think it has a snowball's chance of actually happening. Within A, I subdivide it into A1, where Rachel wins in a landslide, and A2, where she wins with 6 or fewer of the jury votes. Within B, I subdivide it into B1, where Sam wins, and B2, where Teeny or Sue wins, but that also gets a snowflake. Within B1 are B1A, where Sam wins in a landslide, and B1B, where he wins with 6 or fewer of the jury votes, like in the hypothetical scenario I described before. If any variation of B occurs, if 3 women and 1 man walk into the finale, and the man emerges as the victor, will that hurt my claim that Survivor 47 is a feminist masterpiece? It would mean that Sam, not just a man, but the castaway presented as the masculine ideal, won in a final tribal council against the 2 castaways presented as anti-man.
Am I just like a man hater at my core? When I went into the aviation industry, which is male dominated, so I totally know how to handle guys like that.
It's time for some mental time travel. Let us consider a boardroom of Survivor editors after outcome B has occurred, supposing it occurs, but before they've edited any of the footage. So, what story are we going to tell? Asks one. On its face, says another, the outcome is pretty unpalatable for 2024. There were 3 women in the final 4, and yet the handsome white dude won the day. Says another. If we want the viewers to be okay with that ending, we need to highlight not just his competence, but his kindness, and emphasize the times that Teeny and Sue were out of the loop. But that's not going to be enough, said the first. We need to communicate that he succeeded in spite of the fact that he's a handsome white dude, not because of it. I've got it! Remember Teeny's tantrum after Sam didn't take her on the reward? She said she disliked him for being a prom king, and Sue agreed. That is the scene we need to make a Sam victory over Teeny and Sue satisfying. All right, let's go edit the episodes. You go find every bit of footage of Sam being respectful of strong women.
First thing I want to say, if this is our last tribal council together, it was an absolute pleasure playing with you. If it's me going, fight like hell, get there, and you got my vote.
You're in charge of the Annika-Sam personality conflict. Make sure it plays out in an ungendered way. And you're in charge of the Sue-Kyle conflict. Make sure it's very gendered. Bloop, 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 bloop. If we get outcome A, a simple victory for Rachel, it's going to seem like I spent a long time imagining a scenario that never happened. But my main message stands. I have been calling Survivor 47 a feminist masterpiece. But if it is, that's because of the choices the editors made, and those choices were constrained by the actual events that unfolded on the islands of Fiji. The answer to the question, would a Sam victory hurt my claim that Survivor 47 is a feminist masterpiece, is no. The show gets neither credit nor blame for who wins in the end. That's up to the jury. All the show can do is portray the female castaways with an amount of depth appropriate to how far they went in the game. Next episode, I'll weigh in on whether Rachel, Teeny, and Sue got that fair edit. Today, I want to focus on the newly eliminated Genevieve. Although she barely appeared on screen in the first episode, she ended up with the most well-rounded portrayal. We saw her social relationships and her strategic maneuvering. We heard from her when she was on top of the world and in her lowest moments.
I chose to have no friends. Who does that?
She is stunning, but she wasn't objectified. She backstabbed her allies, but she wasn't vilified. She wasn't any stereotype, she was her whole self.
It's the Taylor Swift honest truth.
You know, there's societies in Korea where it's just women who choose to live together.
This is Survivor. Nothing's ever so cookie cutter. Oh, boys and girls